10 years working for others, still no respect, Section 1. Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the quiet grind of a life you probably know all too well. Picture this: your alarm yanks you from sleep before the sun even rolls over. You fumble for your phone, swipe the same snooze button for the 15th year in a row, and sit up with that familiar pit in your stomach. It's not dread exactly, it's something duller. The steady ache of doing everything right for so long and still not being seen. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop your city and what time it is where you are. I always read the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You start working young, maybe a summer job stacking grocery shelves or pulling double shifts at the local diner. Maybe you're one of those unlucky few who skipped the fun college years entirely and went straight into full-time adulthood. You do what you have to. Rent doesn't pay itself. Your dream job, sure it's there, but right now you've got bills, so you chase reliability over passion. You tell yourself it's temporary, that if you just keep your head down, stay late, say yes more often than no, someone's bound to notice. Spoiler, they don't. The early years pass in a blur of team player moments. You're that person everyone leans on, whether it's covering a coworker's mistake or calming down an angry client. You're dependable. That's the problem. Dependable gets thanked but never rewarded. No praise for keeping everything afloat, just more work. And sure, you get your annual review. You know the drill. You're doing great, they say. We couldn't run this place without you. You wait for the big moment, the raise, the promotion, the offer to move into a role you deserve, but no, just a pat on the back and a pizza party. Historians still argue whether corporate pizza parties are meant to motivate or just clog arteries. You start noticing odd patterns. The flashy guy who joined last week, he gets coffee with the boss. The intern who smiles a lot but asks you how to send an email. She's already being mentored for leadership. And you're asked to show her the ropes again. In fact, the Industrial Revolution gave rise to the concept of salaried work and structured career paths. Quirky fact, in 18th century England, workers were sometimes paid in gin. You'd probably settle for a livable raise and some health insurance that covers more than ibuprofen. Still, you push on, because that's what you were taught. Work hard, be loyal, don't rock the boat. But even now in these early chapters, a quiet question starts forming in the back of your mind. What if no one's ever coming to reward this loyalty? You're still there. Same desk, same chair, with that one broken wheel that squeaks when you shift. Same fluorescent lighting that hums overhead like a swarm of digital mosquitoes. Years have passed, and you've grown sharper, faster, better, but you've also grown tired. Not from the work exactly, but from the imbalance. Because something's off and you're starting to see it. You're the person people come to when things break. When the client is fuming, when the deadline's collapsing, you patch it up with duct tape and grit and they thank you briefly. And then nothing changes, except the bar. That rises. Your name gets tossed around in meetings. Oh, let's have you take this to your name. They'll know what to do. You've become the utility player, the human Swiss Army knife. But when promotion season comes around, your name doesn't even make the short list. Instead, it's the guy who joined last quarter, the one whose biggest accomplishment so far is organizing Taco Tuesday. He gets lead slapped onto his title and a shiny new nameplate. You get to train him. Of course you do. Historians still argue whether the corporate ladder was originally built with invisible rungs for certain people. That's not a joke. Okay, maybe a little. But it's true that the language of meritocracy often glosses over the reality of workplace bias and favoritism. And in your case, favoritism wears khakis and always knows the boss's favorite golf course. You tell yourself it's just bad luck. That next time, it'll be you. You update your resume, then forget to send it. You rehearse asking for a raise in the mirror, then lose your nerve. You stay. Again. In fact, in ancient Rome, some enslaved workers with high skills were considered more valuable than lower-class citizens. Quirky, right? Except you're sitting here in 2024 and still being told you're valuable without being treated like it. You go to the office holiday party, there's cheap wine and awkward karaoke. The boss clinks his glass, calls you the backbone of the team, and mispronounces your last name for the third year in a row. You laugh politely. You clap for the guy who just got promoted. You wonder if you're being too sensitive. Maybe you should smile more. And yet, the knot in your stomach tightens each time someone says, "We couldn't do this without you," but then turns around and does just that without you and without a second thought. By now, you're fluent in the unspoken rules. You know which meetings matter and which ones are just calendar clutter. You know when to laugh at the boss's joke and when to stay silent while someone else takes credit for your work. You've learned how to be excellent quietly, and still the pattern repeats. A new hire walks through the door, fresh degree, fresh haircut, fresh confidence. You train them. You walk them through the system, fix their mistakes before they're noticed. Share the shortcuts it took you 5 years to master. They nod, they smile, and 6 months later, they're promoted. You're left blinking under the same flickering lights, reading the announcement email like a script you've memorized, but still hate hearing. It doesn't stop there. One gets invited to lunch with the director, another gets sent to a conference in Seattle. You cover their responsibilities while they're away. You're dependable, remember? Historians still argue whether the Peter Principle, where people are promoted to their level of incompetence, is just cynical folklore or brutally accurate. Either way, you're watching it happen in real time. Again, fact. In the mid-20th century, Japanese companies introduced the concept of lifetime employment, promising loyalty to workers in exchange for loyalty to the company. Quirky twist. Even those companies started phasing that out by the 90s. You wonder what would happen if you stopped caring. If you didn't reply to that 10 p.m. email. If you left 5 minutes early instead of staying an hour late. But then someone would drop the ball and you know whose name would come up? Yours. Not because you dropped it, because you didn't catch it in midair. You tell yourself it's fine, that maybe respect isn't everything. Maybe being needed is enough. But then you overhear it. The new guy joking with a manager. Yeah, I mean, they've been here forever, right? Kind of just part of the furniture. Furniture, that one sticks. Because you know he didn't mean it maliciously. That's what makes it worse. You've become so woven into the scenery that no one thinks about you anymore. Not as a person with ambition, not as someone still hoping for more. The furniture doesn't get promoted. It doesn't get raises. It gets dusted off once a year and replaced when it breaks. You smile politely anyway. There's a strange kind of quiet in being invisible. Not the kind that soothes. The kind that buzzes beneath your skin like a phone on silent mode left in your pocket all day, vibrating with unspoken frustration. You exist, but only as a function. You're not celebrated, not really, just expected. You catch glimpses of what appreciation might look like. Someone else gets a handwritten thank you card from the CEO. Someone else is publicly recognized at the quarterly meeting. You get a Slack message that says, "THX, no emoji." Just 3 letters lowercase. The punctuation of indifference. Fact. In 1931, the term white collar was coined to describe salaried professionals who worked in offices, not factories. A quirky side note. Office workers in the early 1900s were often forbidden from talking to each other during work hours to maximize efficiency. Sound familiar? You cover for someone again. They're sick or on vacation or just having a rough week. You say yes because that's what you do. No one asks if you're having a rough week. You're the fallback. The plan B? The person who's always fine, because no one checks if you're not. And it's not like you expect the parades. But some days, it would be nice if someone remembered your birthday without needing a calendar reminder, or asked how your weekend was without looking at their phone halfway through your answer. Historians still argue whether the modern workplace was ever designed to value human dignity, or if it simply evolved to optimize output. The answer changes depending on who's holding the mic. You start keeping mental notes. Times you fixed something no one noticed. Times you cleaned up someone else's mess and let them keep the credit. Times you didn't speak up even though your idea was better. You've got a ledger now. One no one sees but you. And when you leave early just once to catch your niece's school play, they notice. Oh, they notice. Suddenly the dependable one slipped. The chair creaked. The furniture moved. It's subtle, but you feel it. The slight shift in tone, the surprised glance, the implication, How dare you be something other than reliable? You laugh it off. You always do. But inside, it's there, that question growing louder. How long do you keep proving your worth before you admit they'll never see it? Loyalty starts to feel like a trap disguised as a compliment. You've passed up better paying roles before. Maybe one was at a startup across town. Maybe another was out of state offering a fresh title and more money. But you stayed. Because your boss said you were irreplaceable. Because they hinted that something bigger was coming. Because you felt guilty leaving your team behind. That's the catch, isn't it? When you're dependable, you become the glue. And glue never gets the credit. It just keeps the pieces from falling apart. You think loyalty will be rewarded, but the truth is, it's often mistaken for complacency. Fact. In feudal societies, vassals swore lifelong loyalty to their lords in exchange for protection and land. The modern version, you swear loyalty for free pizza and a promise that things might get better next quarter. And now, years later, those opportunities you passed up, the ones you politely declined, you see those same companies thriving. You spot a former colleague on LinkedIn. She's smiling in front of a banner that says, Vice President. She was once your intern. Historians still argue whether upward mobility in corporate America is truly merit-based or just a maze of networking and luck. Whatever the truth, it doesn't feel like merit when you've worked 10 years without a real title change. One day you hear your manager say to a newer hire, "Don't worry, your name will take care of it." And something inside you pauses. Not because you're shocked they've said it before, but because you finally recognize the tone. It's not trust, it's assumption, a shrug of convenience. You are their safety net. And safety nets don't get applause. They just catch the fall, then disappear into the background again. You start imagining what it would look like to walk away. Just pack your desk and go. You could email your resignation on a Friday, unplug your computer, and vanish into the weekend. You imagine the silence after. Not one of peace, but of confusion. Because they never thought you'd leave. But for now you stay. Not because you're weak, but because walking away from something you gave so much to, that takes a strength you're still building. And deep down, you wonder, when does loyalty stop being a virtue and start being a form of self-abandonment? It always starts the same way. The company posts a big announcement. We're one big family, it says. In bold letters, nestled between stock images of smiling employees holding coffee mugs. The email reads like a sitcom intro, except you're not the star. You're not even the quirky neighbor. You're the person resetting the props between takes. You're told this place is special. We support each other, they say. We're in this together. But when budget cuts come, guess who gets axed? Not the executive with a summer house in Napa. Not the manager whose biggest achievement last quarter was sending a team-wide meme. No, it's your teammate, the one who just had a baby. It's the janitor who knows everyone's name. It's the quiet ones. You survive the cut, but something in you breaks with it. Because you realize this family talk. It's just branding. No one's inviting you to Thanksgiving. And your health insurance definitely doesn't act like family. Fact. The idea of the corporate family became popular in the 1980s, when companies began using emotional language to mask top-down control. The quirky bit one major CEO in that era publicly referred to layoffs as surgical love. Yep, love that fires you. Historians still argue whether this emotional manipulation is strategic or just habitual now. Whatever it is, it works. You hesitate to complain, you keep smiling, you say things like, "It's fine, and I'm just lucky to still have a job." But you notice the gaps. Your workload increases while your paycheck doesn't. You stay late again while the family happy hour happens without you. You fix problems your boss created, and no one says thank you. Not even with a lowercase the X. And the CEO, he just bought a Tesla. You're still microwaving leftovers and hoping your old laptop holds out one more year. There's a moment, tiny but clear, when you realize this isn't a family. It's a business. A business that runs on your silence, your consistency, your reluctance to demand more. You don't expect a parade, but maybe an ounce of truth would be nice. You go to the break room. There's a handwritten sign above the coffee pot. We're all in this together. You laugh under your breath. You're not sure what's funnier, the sign or the fact that the coffee's still decaf. Eventually, you speak up. Not with rage, not with fire, just a quiet, steady voice. You ask for a meeting. You sit down across from your manager and explain calmly all the things you've taken on, the responsibilities you weren't hired for, the deadlines you've saved, the times you've covered for others, the years, really. You ask for recognition, a promotion, a raise, something to mark the decade you've given to this place. And that's when the shift happens. Your manager leans back. The nodding slows. There's a pause, heavy and diplomatic. You've been doing a great job, they say. But we have to think about team dynamics. We can't play favorites. Favorites. You bite your tongue. Because if what you've been doing doesn't count, then what does fact? In medieval guilds, craftsmen would spend years as apprentices, then journeymen before becoming masters. The quirky twist. Even after proving themselves some, were never allowed to advance due to politics, family ties, or simple favoritism. Historians still argue whether those rigid hierarchies ever fully dissolved or just put on business casual and started using HR buzzwords. You leave the meeting without answers. But now you've got a new label. You feel it. You hear it. They're not as easygoing as they used to be. Kind of entitled lately. Not a team player. It stings. Because for years, you were the team. You kept the engine running, and the moment you asked for fuel, you became a problem. They start passing you over for meetings. Your suggestions are taken under consideration and never heard again. That conference you used to lead. It's now being given to someone with less experience for fresh perspective. It's death by 1,000 subtweets. Not literal ones, but close. You become a shadow of your old self, even though you're still doing everything you always did. Only now they've stopped pretending to notice. You realize they never respected you. They just enjoyed how easy it was to take advantage of you. Like the old saying goes, the squeaky wheel gets replaced, not oiled. And you're squeaking now. It's not just work anymore, it's life bleeding through the cracks. You start noticing the birthdays. You miss the dentist appointments you rescheduled 3 times. The unread messages from friends you used to see every weekend. You haven't had a real vacation in years. Just long weekends where you still check your email from the hotel. You used to tell yourself this was normal. That sacrifice was the price of progress. But now it just feels like erosion of time, of energy, of who you used to be. You wake up tired. Not from sleep deprivation, but from waking up to the same loop. Another fire to put out. Another late-night email with urgent in the subject line. Another task dumped on your plate because you're the only one who can handle it. Fact. During the post-World War II economic boom, Americans began to embrace the company man ideal. Someone who dedicated their life to one employer. Quirky twist. Many of those companies no longer exist. The loyalty outlasted the business. Historians still argue whether the work-life balance was ever real or just another carrot on a stick forever 2 steps away. You miss your niece's birthday party. Again. She sends you a drawing she made of the family. You're not in it. You remember staying late to help a colleague, once a guy with 2 kids and a sick wife? You handled his deadlines while he dealt with life. And now he's moved on. Different company, better pay. He sends you a LinkedIn message. Hope you're doing well. You stare at it too long, unsure how to reply. And still you keep going. Because bills don't care about burnout. Because walking away still feels reckless. Because you've convinced yourself that maybe you're one meeting away from finally being seen. But the meetings keep happening. And you keep fading further into the background. You eat lunch at your desk. Again. A cold sandwich. Same view, same keyboard. Someone walks by and says, "Wow, you're always here," like it's a compliment. Like, it's not a quiet little tragedy disguised as dedication. You don't cry, but you think about it, often. And somehow, even in the middle of all this, you're still afraid to ask for time off. Because you know what happens when you step away. Things fall apart. And when things fall apart, they remember. But not kindly. There comes a moment unassuming, almost mundane, when something shifts. Maybe it's when you're sitting in traffic after another late-night taillights, stretching ahead like a red river of resignation. Maybe it's in the elevator staring at your own reflection and barely recognizing the tired person looking back. Or maybe it's when you open your inbox and see yet another meeting invite labeled Quick Sync, and your only thought is no more. You don't scream, you don't storm out. The breaking point is quieter than that. It feels like an exhale you didn't know you were holding for 10 years. You realize they're never going to respect you. Not because you're not worthy, but because they've built an entire system on your silence, your willingness, your need to be needed. You played the game. You just didn't know the rules were never meant to let you win. Fact. In 1848, the first women's rights convention was held in Seneca Falls, where women demanded equality not only in law, but in labor. Quirky side note. One delegate suggested that women should be paid the same as men only if they did a man's job without fainting. Classy, right. Historians still argue whether workplace cultures genuinely evolve or just repaint the walls and update the jargon. You start researching options, maybe a new job, maybe freelance, maybe going back to school. It doesn't matter what yet, just that you finally see a path that doesn't involve staying stuck. You don't tell anyone at first. This part is just yours. It feels like lighting a candle in a long, dark room. And slowly you start saying no. Not loudly, not rudely, just no. You decline the weekend project. You don't answer the 11 p.m. Slack ping. You leave at 5:02 and don't apologize. People notice. Not with admiration yet, but with discomfort. Because they were used to the version of you who always gave, always agreed, always bent until nearly broken. And now that you're standing upright, it throws off their balance. You're not trying to be difficult. You're trying to be whole, that's all. You still do your job. You still care. But now you care about yourself too. And for the first time in years, that doesn't feel like betrayal. It feels like healing. And with each small choice, each boundary drawn in pencil, then pen, then permanent marker, you begin to remember who you were before the grind wore you down. Not the worker, the person. You wake up one morning and it's different. Not easier, but clearer. You brew your coffee, stretch your back, and sit at your desk, not because you have to, but because today might be the last. Not in a dramatic way, just in the sense that something new is coming. You've stopped waiting for permission to choose yourself. Maybe it's the email you finally sent to a recruiter. Maybe it's the night class you enrolled in. Or maybe it's just the way you no longer flinch when someone asks you to do something outside your role. Because now, you ask one simple question first. Is this worth it? Fact. In 1973, economist E.F. Schumacher wrote, "Small is beautiful, challenging the obsession with productivity at the cost of humanity." Quirky twist. His ideas were largely ignored for decades until burnout became a global epidemic. Historians still argue whether the concept of career fulfillment is achievable for most people or just marketing to sell more self-help books. You pack up your things one Friday. Not everything just enough. A mug, a photo, a tiny cactus that somehow survived your fluorescent corner of the world. You carry them to your car, your bag, swinging against your side like punctuation. And then you sit there, engine off, breathing. It doesn't feel like freedom yet. It feels like space, like possibility, like the start of something that might just lead to respect, the kind you don't have to beg for. You drive home with the windows cracked. The air smells like dust and spring. A dog sticks its head out a backseat window in the lane next to you. It makes you laugh. It's the first time you've laughed at nothing in months. You don't know what's next. Maybe your next job won't be perfect. Maybe you'll struggle a bit. But what you do know is that the old you, the one who stayed for 10 years waiting to be seen, deserves a thank you. You kept going when no one clapped. You stood strong when they acted like you didn't exist. Now you get to rewrite the rules. Now you get to choose respect, not wait for it. And with that thought, the world softens. You're no longer part of the furniture. You're the one rebuilding the room. Wind down. Let's slow everything down now. Let the noise fall away like dust settling on a quiet evening floor. Your thoughts, once tangled, begin to loosen, drifting like leaves over still water. Your breath deepens. You feel the weight you've been carrying begin to ease just a little, maybe for the first time in a long time. You remember the hum of the fan, the way the darkness cradles your room in calm. You picture yourself in a place where you're finally valued, not because of how much you give, but because you finally said enough. Let that thought stay with you. Let it warm the corners of your mind. Tomorrow will come and you'll face it with clearer eyes. But for now, let the world sleep around you. Close your eyes, rest. You've earned it.